evening and welcome to the October 14th, 2021 meeting number 3 of the Town Seal Review Committee. My name is John Arnold, Town Moderator and appointing authority for the committee. Since the committee has not yet elected a chair, I'm just going to preside over the meeting until the committee elects a chair. We have a quorum present, and I call the meeting to order. So the first item of business on the agenda is to accept minutes. Now I'm going to, because I didn't realize until after the meeting that at the beginning of the last meeting we only had, I think, 5 members, and I didn't realize till afterward that Eric hadn't been sworn in yet. So technically we should re-vote. The committee should re-vote those minutes to make sure we have 5 sworn in people. You've been sworn in now, right, Eric?
Correct.
Okay, great. So the first thing I will entertain is another motion to accept the minutes of September 9th. Anybody want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, so
Accept
Phyllis.
the minutes of September 9th.
Phyllis moves to accept the minutes. There were no, I don't recall there being any amendments last time, so I think it's okay. I assume the committee is okay with not needing seconds? Everybody okay? Yep. All right, any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of accepting the minutes of September 9th, 2021, please raise their hand or say aye. Looks like that's 7-0 to 0, with 2 members absent. We'll now move on to the September 23rd minutes. I know they were lengthy, but since there were a number of members who weren't here, I tried to capture them as best I could. I don't think I received any corrections or additions. So does someone want to make a motion to accept the minutes of September 23rd?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of September 23rd.
So Ms. Mickle has made a motion to accept the minutes. Any discussion? Anything need to be added, subtracted, changed? Seeing no discussion, we'll have a vote. All those in favor of accepting the minutes of September 23rd, please raise their hand, say aye. Looks like 7-0-0. Okay, that's great. So I know I did this last time, so I'm just going to keep my agenda here. Oh, I guess I'll go over the agenda for anybody watching at home to know what's coming up. So we're going to do committee organization. Then there's going to be a discussion. This is what's on the agenda. So discussion on the usage of the town seal that got deferred from last time. And also Ms. Mickle wasn't here, so we'll have a discussion on Wendy's notes that she sent out on the usage and review of the town seal and the other town seals. There'll be a discussion of the content for the information session presentation and the context for gathering public input based on a discussion that started at the last meeting. Following that, or interleaved with that perhaps, a discussion of a marketing plan for getting public input and outreach. Then there'll be planning for future meetings and finally setting an agenda and a date, time, and place for the next meeting. I'd also like to remind anybody watching at home, and also those of you who are new, the town's having a special town meeting on Monday night at the high school, starting at 7 o'clock. As the committee has discussed, eventually your recommendation is going to go before town meeting, so I would suggest that if you can get to the town meeting on Monday night, you might want to go and just see what it's like. And I'm also, I'm not going to give a report, but I'm going to report that this committee has been formed and has started to meet as part of my report at the beginning of the meeting since the annual town meeting in May is when this committee was authorized for me to appoint people. I think he sent it to all of us. We got mail from Nick Argento this morning that he's going to be a little late because of yet another rescheduled soccer game. Just so we have the maximum number of people, I'm going to skip over the committee organization until he's here so we can make sure everybody's voice has been heard. I've tried to contact Candace, who hasn't been to any of our meetings yet. She did get sworn in, right, Wendy? Mm-hmm. So she's been sworn in. I've tried to contact her a few times and haven't heard back. I will redouble my efforts, but I think as soon as Nick gets here, we can sort of do the committee organization. So with that, we'll postpone that until we have Nick here. And I guess we can move ahead to the usage of the town seal. Now again, I'm starting to ease my way out of, I'm going to guide the committee, but I'm going to ease my way out of doing this once we get it. But just to reset the context, in between the first and second meetings, Wendy had sent out a thick stack PDF of interest about the town seal. And since she wasn't here at the last meeting, also since it was very late by the time we got to that part, we decided to defer it till now. So I guess, Wendy, do you want to sort of do a brief overview of what we have here?
Yeah,
And then we'll see how much discussion there is and see what the committee wants to talk about.
okay. So every town clerk in every town has a town seal, and we all pretty much use the town seal for the same thing. We're all the keeper of the town seal, and we're the only ones authorized to use the town seal. So the documents that require the town seal is certification of town meeting actions, certification of bond approval, tax documents with the assessor, we certify, or I certify all the election results, certify the filing of special permits and variances with the registry of deeds, certify all vital records, births, deaths, marriages, and the filing of marriage intentions. And we keep a record of all births, deaths, and every marriage that are, that either occur in Westboro or the residents that live in Westboro. And those things occur, and we certify all of those. We certify a town record, if someone's looking for that, or a proclamation of sorts. That's pretty much everything that we do with the town seal. I don't know if anyone has any questions?
Any questions about that or anything that was in Wendy's packet? I know the reason the packet's so extensive is that she cut and pasted a bunch of, it's interesting to go through what the other town seals look like. Any discussion we want to have about that?
If I get this right, it's on like a thing, you put the paper in and you emboss it.
Yep, I was
Yeah.
gonna
Well, maybe you
bring
could
it,
bring
I
it
should have brought it, yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't think to do that.
It's kind of like a notary
Yeah,
thing.
it's just a bigger,
All right, so those are all the official, excuse me, official uses for the town seal. So all of the, my sense is that it's almost as if the unofficial use of the town seal is what really concerns people as much as it is the official use.
you mean like on letterhead or?
Yeah, on letterhead, on a flag, on the sides of vehicles used by town departments. Those are not official uses based on what you've just said. Those are all kind of what I would call the unofficial uses of the town seal. And somehow it seems to me that they're actually much more visible than the official use of the town seal, and that they are, those usages, in fact, are the things that people see, react to, and have opinions about, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's true.
And then if we never use the town seal that you're embossing on all those papers for anything else,
No.
we probably wouldn't be sitting here.
Right.
It's my
Right.
point.
Because you really can't tell what it is. If
Yeah,
you're
well, that's exactly right.
on
It's
the,
exactly right. So in a sense, we're really discussing is the unofficial uses of the town seal. Just my take on the town seal.
So
Yeah.
has there at any point been a different logo maybe for the town that was used in the ways that Phyllis was describing, unofficially that diverged from the official town seal that you emboss documents with?
I've,
To your knowledge?
no, not that I'm aware of. The seal, there was a seal before this one,
Right.
and it's pretty basic. I don't know if everybody saw it.
Yeah.
It just says Westboro.
Yeah, he told me sent it around to us.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone ever unofficially put it on things.
Yeah, I was gonna
That's
say, was
interesting.
that seal used on the sides of the DPW trucks and on
Right.
everything else?
Right.
Or was there sort of nothing before that? And I guess what I'm getting at, and you used the word logo, is that the town seal has become, in a sense, the town logo, and that maybe we should be calling ourselves the new, do we need a town logo? As opposed to going through this whole official town seal thing. Well, I granted the town seal is, people feel is inappropriate, and yes, if we change that, but they could almost be two separate items.
Right?
Yeah, one thing the committee can consider is, remember, if you go back to what the charge of the committee is, the committee's charged with reviewing the town seal, but also making recommendations. So there's nothing in the charge it would mean one of the recommendations could be
To
do
do-
this with the official town seal, but maybe recommend doing something else or providing separate guidance for what you're
Yeah.
discussing as a logo.
Yeah,
My
a
recollection
town
is that I
town
don't
logo
recall.
could almost just be done completely internally within the town without ever having to go to the state legislature or whatever the heck we have to do
It
to
would
get
likely
that
be
seal changed.
yeah.
It could almost be a completely different process,
Similar
it's a
to
much
the-
simpler process.
Similar to the
right?
discussion we had about the street signs, where that was done by, that
Exactly.
was done by the selectmen.
Yeah, exactly, the selectmen just
Yeah.
decided that.
Mhm.
So it's, this puts it into a whole different, contemplating a whole different approach.
It does.
Just the
Didn't
point,
think of that.
one important point would be that if the committee did recommend to change the seal and that process moving forward, would be any, like, mechanism for requiring the DPW trucks, other the unofficial usages to remove those? So in other words, we could change the town seal, but we would still have the logo
Yep,
on display, right?
yep.
I think the committee can recommend anything,
Right.
the committee
Okay.
can't
So
compel
you
anything,
would wanna
but the
make sure it's
recommendations could be
specified,
very,
right.
very wide. I mean,
Yeah.
essentially, the main charge is what to do about the town seal, which is this official thing that we have. But an alternate could be, a town logo infographic, it could be, if there are other ways to sort of solve the problem.
Yeah,
You
and
know.
I think the problem has been that the town seal, the official town seal, is really not, the way it's being used isn't necessarily in official capacities, as on trucks and things of that sort. That's not official.
Who,
Yeah, do you know who, like, decided to put it on the side of trucks and things like that?
I would say departments probably asked if they could do it and were allowed to do it. That's how it came to be. And not every vehicle, I don't think has it. Yeah, but you're right.
But it's on the stationery, or like today, I was talking to somebody, I went out to lunch with a friend and mentioned that I was on this town seal committee. And she was asking me some questions about it, and of course, if you go right to the website, it says, here's the town seal. So I mean, the town seal, the official town seal, is on all of the stationery, it's on all of that other stuff. As, in addition to those very official uses that you do with the, whatever you call that mechanism, I don't know what you call it.
The seal.
Oh, I don't-
Embossing.
It's a seal.
It's probably a kind of
Yeah, it's
embossing, it's like an
but
embossing,
it's-
it's like
A what?
embossing.
Yeah, an embosser, yeah,
Yeah.
the embosser
actual
that you
thing, yeah.
use.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Yeah, I guess,
we do have to register this seal when it's considered a seal. It does have to be registered
Well, that
with
was
the
why I
state.
said,
Yeah,
that
but as
if
far as
if we had,
the logo,
yeah, if we never changed that seal on the embosser, but changed everything else, this is now the town logo, this is what's gonna be on the website, this is what's gonna be on the trucks, this is what's gonna be on our stationery. That
think
doesn't
that-
have to go through the state, the only thing that
Right.
would have to go through the state is if we change the official town seal
yes.
that you're using to emboss the official documents.
I think there is a concern, like with letterhead, you wouldn't want someone to you'd wanna have the official seal like on maybe letterhead. You wouldn't want somebody using the seal or copying it. I think there'd be certain
Is it
things.
it's copyrighted?
I don't know that actually.
I doubt it.
Is,
I doubt that it is, I can't imagine.
Can we, how does this committee feel about adding an item to our agenda, maybe not necessarily for today, but to explore this very valid concern that Phyllis brought up? That in addition to the town seal, we do have this logo that's very visible. We don't really know, at least I don't know, maybe you know better, what the process is for these individual trucks and cars that are run by the town to add this logo to their vehicles. I'm particularly interested, not even as much in DPW trucks, but in our police cars, police cruisers. Some time ago we had Chief Laurie, in the committee, in the other committee where I volunteer, called We Care, and he was answering questions from residents of Westboro, and one of the questions was really surprising to me because I'd never noticed it, but the question was, who decides what goes on police cruisers someone had noticed that one of the police cruisers in town had a Blue Lives Matter sticker or logo on it or something like that, something along those lines. And the question was, if these are official town vehicles, then is the town ultimately endorsing what this cruiser is saying? So should it be a part of our work here, once we figure out the seal situation, to also address the logo? Because we might end up in a situation where even if the seal is changed, the logo, the visible portion, the way we present ourselves to the rest of the world, is still very much in the same state. So how do we procedurally make that happen? And how do other committee members feel about that?
I think the police cruisers prior to these, didn't they have like a police badge? Or
I don't
it
remember.
seems like
I
it
think-
wasn't,
I think I remember
it was
a
like the
badge.
police
Yeah.
badge of
Yeah.
some sort, not the seal.
I haven't looked at them really carefully lately, but I,
haven't either.
Well, now they're just like the blacked out ones, right? That are like, that have like the, like, I don't know, they're all black now.
The cruisers,
Yeah.
I think
And-
that-
But
Is
I
it a-
think they just say.
Is it a
Westboro Police
logo
on
or
it.
is it,
I don't think there's anything on
I
it.
think
Oh,
it just says
okay.
Westboro Police.
so it's basically just the DPW maybe, or, I'll find out what
Or
trucks
the,
they have.
but
in it,
on this
what
question, like the
vehicles.
website, other places, we should
Right.
maybe just make either it's a recommendation or an inquiry with the selectmen,
Mhm.
Right.
right, in whatever formal report we issue to, take action on this as well.
Should we
Yeah,
put this
because
on our
I-
agenda?
I think the issue here is if we, quote, change the seal, we in a sense haven't changed any of the stuff that's out there in the public domain, because we've really only changed that embosser that's over at town hall going on official documents.
Yep.
And I don't think that, believe it or not, I don't think that was the intent. I think the intent was to change what's out there in the public view, and not what happens in town hall on the embosser.
What if it's just part of our recommendation that the old seal is retired anywhere it appears?
Anywhere it appears?
Yeah.
Well,
Official town.
well, I'm sure there's some easy way to do it, to make sure that we cover that, but they
Yeah.
really are two separate things.
And the way I understand this, Phyllis, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think they're two separate things, because one needs to be done by public process, right, where residents of town vote. The other one can be done by the process with just the board of select people,
Yep.
Right.
right?
Well,
So,
that's what she said, like with the street signs,
Yeah.
just the board of selectmen changed
Right.
it, because it's just a logo. And really, what's out there in the public now is a representation of the town seal that has become a logo for the town.
mhm,
And I think that's what has happened over time, and we need to make sure that we cover the bases here, or we can get a little confused.
May I ask? I'm sorry, I'm gonna.
No, I'm fine.
And of course, not expecting you to speak for him, but you asked the question in a public forum, he's responded, I too noticed that.
yeah,
All of a sudden, it just appeared.
right,
That Blue Lives Matter flag is only a couple years old,
yeah,
so it was in the last few years. My gut's telling me it was a decision made there, and they plopped it on the car. What did he say in
he
response to?
didn't respond to that one. It was a question that was added in the chat.
Mhm.
It was a Zoom meeting, and so it just was a question that was unanswered,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
So it's telling, because if we do change, and as you said, anyway, you have to really look closely at it in a certain light to see that the seal's been changed. And it's conceivable that this is the process that results in that, but nothing else, that we actually don't have agency over changes. So this would be a big giant tempest in a teapot of hundreds of hours of meetings, and the perception of the world will still be, that's the town that has that seal, right? So it's a good conversation to have this early on, right? Based on what we're hearing about the police car and that relatively controversial symbol as well, there could be folks out there that decide to put these images on the side of their vehicles for their department that would go, okay, that's their suggestion, but I'm not changing anything. And that sort of seems like, I don't know, problematic, right? Especially if it goes through the process and town hall votes on it, and it's the voice of the townspeople, and individuals can say, no. So is there a way, John, to expand, they actually have the net cast over what
Well, procedurally, my take is that the key recommendation from this committee is to say, should the town change the town seal or not, and if so, a process for changing it. But given this conversation, I think if the committee wanted to capture the, the official versus unofficial use of the town seal, and that if this, I'm not gonna put words in.
Yeah, sure.
If this committee believes that part of the reason the town seal became an issue was because of these sort of subservient uses, then I would say that the committee's report could say, we also recommend that this should be done. So I think
Yeah.
capturing that thought, if that's what the committee wants to do, and I would, going back to Ola's question, which is also sort of yours, in terms of procedurally, in terms of what to do now, right now, I would just say the committee members should keep in their mind, or we'll have it in the minutes, that when it comes time for the committee to hear from the public and to deliberate, to be thinking about what does the committee want to recommend about both the official use and then perhaps a side narrative and recommendation about the unofficial use and what happens with that.
So this was a very potent list here of what the official use is. I think it would be helpful to actually have, like, we're assuming it's on this truck and this department. I don't really know. Letterhead, you're saying, website?
Yep.
Is there a way, John, to find out? I mean, there's only so many departments, right, that have vehicles. So,
Right.
Well, there's like uniforms too.
Yeah.
It was on a badge, I think,
Yeah.
a police badge.
but I guess if
The
it's,
seal was on the badge?
I think so.
Oh,
The
good.
seal?
I know I saw it right when I was
It's on their
here.
patch, I believe.
That's what I was thinking.
It's not,
yeah.
not the badge. The badge
Oh,
just
oh,
is
okay.
Town of West Point, is the
is
number,
this
but
the
the
fire
patch.
department badge?
I happen to see the fire
The
department
town police
also
badge
while
that they have,
was
because I know,
here, yeah.
the seal, the patch that they wear, because I know I bought one of the pink breast cancer ones. It essentially is whatever is on whichever sleeve they wear it on. And it has like a crest shape, and then I believe it says Town of Westboro, and it has the town seal.
Because at this point, it speaks to later, when we were talking about our, the slideshow we would do to give people the context. Here's where it is, and so if a change is made, this is actually what would happen, versus
Right.
some people making it maybe bigger than it is, or thinking it's not, like, it would help to know, like, it's worn by patches by the police department and the fire department. It's on the car for the home inspect, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, I mean, we can find that out, we don't need to know right now, but.
I also think that there could be differences in what we recommended. Like, if we were to recommend that it needs to be removed like this month, everywhere it appears, I think that would be pretty unpopular. But it could be like a rollout whenever you need to print new letterhead, that's when the new seal is used. Or whenever you need to order new patches, that's when the new seal would be applied. And I could see that being more palatable.
I think that question came up at a town meeting too, about the cost to do that, for
Yeah.
the vehicles, to have them repainted. And just to, to do it as you're replacing things would seem more reasonable.
Okay, and so it sounds like the committee wants to make a mental note to keep this official versus unofficial at front of mind. Other than that, is there
Well,
anything else you want to talk about?
the other aspect of this would be is there some kind of a fact-finding mission that we can accomplish? And if so, what would be the process for that, for obtaining the list of places where the seal unofficially appears as a logo?
My belief is that hopefully by the end of this meeting, when you have a chairman, the chairman could probably send an email to the town manager and to Wendy, just asking if they could brainstorm, and it would not, I doubt anyone has a fully compiled list, but I bet if the department heads across town, got an email from the town manager just saying, can you do an inventory and give off the top of your head, where is the seal used? My guess is having the chairman send that request would probably be the best way, and then if that doesn't work, I can help with that as well. And then also, all of you can use your networks and use, your senses. When you drive around town, just look for places where you might not expect it and see what it's there. So, see where it is. I hadn't even thought about the fact that the new police cars with the new paint jobs, I don't think do have it, but the old ones did. So I think just having the chairman send a request to just say we're trying to do an inventory of where it's used could be a good starting point on that. I would imagine that Christie could send it to department heads, and probably Amber could ask around the schools where it's used.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on the usage of the town seal? It's not like we have to use all the time that's on the agenda. I just carved out what I thought seemed like reasonable amounts of time. Okay. Of course, we can revisit, if somebody thinks of something, let me know. Oh, I forgot to mention, Ian's taking notes tonight, I'm also taking notes, but this is, we're doing cut over tonight, I believe, that Ian will draft and I'll try to review and everybody can review. And hopefully by the end of the meeting, Ian will be elected secretary.
I'm sorry for the loud punching.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you.
Thanks again for doing that.
Yeah, and all I know from experience how difficult it is to fully participate and get your thoughts. So when Ian speaks, if somebody else could take notes, so if Ian has to go back and say, what did I say again, that would be helpful. I know that's because I have, at home, I have great stacks of notebooks that has everything everyone else says. And when, and then it's like me summarized what I was thinking. I have to remember what I was thinking at the time. Okay, so the next thing was a discussion of, and again, the previous discussion may influence this. The next agenda item was the discussion of content for the information session presentation and the context for gathering public input. I know, as noted in the minutes from the September 23rd meeting, we had left the previous meeting with a little bit of sort of like a bullet point draft. I don't recall if anyone sent out any details or wants to how we want to start the conversation, if someone wants to recap or just see where we are.
If anyone has the minutes proximate to them, this
Yeah.
is, we determined the number of slides, right? That we were
Yeah,
going to. Oh, we can.
You want, yeah.
No, I.
If you want to review, since you did a lot of the talking at the whiteboard.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And look, the whole whiteboard is here for you now, so.
Yeah.
we can-
Now, today we have it, right?
Not the little-
And I did take pictures of the whiteboard last time too, in
Oh,
case I
excellent.
got it wrong, though I think that's where I got it from. It's two-sided, so you might have to look for where it may be. As I recall, it's probably the third page, second or third page?
I think it's the third page has 3 items on it.
Yeah, it's.
And I think I might have collapsed 1A and 1 together, or I turned it into 4 things. I know we started out with 1, 2, 3, and then you added a 1A. Once anybody's ready, if somebody wants to sort of summarize or kick off the discussion, I will try to take notes, but not interject too much, except take answer questions.
So we said that the initial meeting with the public should include 3 slides. I think we discussed sort of being on the parsimonious side with the number of slides there. We didn't want to be too verbose, put people to sleep. But the 3 slides that we said we wanted to include were, one is the overview of committee charge, to begin with that, right? So that sort of we very clearly communicate our purpose to the public, what we are and what we aren't. The second one would be history of the town seal, and we talked about including the speech that was read to us. Anthony, what's his last name?
Weber.
Weber, thank you. His speech in its entirety, possibly. And then the third slide would be questions that we would come up with, questions for discussion that would help generate feedback from residents and sort of help residents in town to focus their opinions. And we wrote down some of those questions that we could put up on the slide. One was, what does the town seal communicate to you? Or another one was, what purpose should the town seal have? So do we want to take these in order? Or split up work on these? How do we want to?
I think it makes a lot of sense to definitely have number 1, right, to just inform people
Right.
why this committee exists and what its kind of process is. So I see other folks agree, disagree, but I don't see, that seems like a given, right? The history of the town seal, I guess the question is, how detailed would it be? Would it just be a bullet pointed chronology? Or would there be more context provided? And the only question I had, and I'm curious to hear other folks' opinions, you know, Nick sent out some information about the history of the cotton gin and sort of related historical information. So if we're providing questions to the public, do we also want to provide contextual historical information too? And it's, you know, I'm curious to know other folks' thoughts about that, whether it's our duty to just listen or to also try to sort of inform what folks are thinking.
So my sense is that, yes, definitely, we cannot divorce the meaning of this symbol from the history, from the relevant history, which is why I think that Tony's speech in its entirety would be so helpful to include. But I think also that we could maybe provide even a little bit more context than the speech had, right? Because we have, one of the advantages of the composition of this particular committee is we have a number of historians here among us, right, who are qualified to provide their expertise on this, and I think not to take advantage of that would be kind of silly and wasteful.
I don't think we want to lead people either down to think what to think. You know, I mean, I can tell you that in 26 years, one person has asked me what was on the town seal and what was that ladder thing, and I said it's the cotton gin. And they referred to the town hall clock tower as a church steeple. And that isn't, you know, what that is. So I don't know that the town seal is relevant to too many people. I get that, but I also have an issue with just disparaging Eli Whitney. You know, there's the man was, from what I've read, I did do a little research on him, and I have I'm from town, I don't know, I kind of wrote something up, I don't know if you want to hear it, what I have to say, but it's just my feeling, you know, as the town clerk. I've been here pretty much all of my life. My parents moved here when I was a year old. There was about 9,500 people living here then, and now there's 22,000. I was raised and educated here, I got married here, I raised my daughter here, I work here, and I'll retire here, and I'll probably die here. So Westboro is really a part of who I am. My fourth grade teacher at the Fail School, she lived in the Eli Whitney home, and she took our class through that house, and she told us at an early age everything about Eli Whitney, and it was something that was exciting for us, I think, because most of my knowledge of Eli Whitney and the cotton gin is from our history books, and these are the same history books that are used throughout the country. So those books gave us the history, you know, of the Revolutionary War, the Industrial Revolution, slavery, pilgrims, the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere. And Westboro was part of that history and included in there, as he was born in Westboro and the inventor of the cotton gin. And there's even today, there's game shows like Jeopardy and Chase that ask about Eli Whitney and the cotton gin. So he's well known throughout the country for his ingenuity. I understand the other part of that, but Eli Whitney's story was a source of pride for all of us as kids living in Westboro, just because it was exciting to see the town of Westboro in a history book. Yes, Eli Whitney left Westboro to attend Yale College, and he never returned. It's about 90% of the kids in Westboro now don't return. But being on the committee, this committee is important to me, and I want to keep it, I hope we don't disparage Eli Whitney in any way, because I feel like he was born in the North, he grew up in the North, he remained in the North his entire life. He was an inventor. He created what plantation owners expressed a need for. They wanted to increase the production of cotton. He found a way to speed that up, and unfortunately, that caused more slaves to be needed. And reading several articles about Eli Whitney, he was in debt from his college years at Yale, and he really just had a desire to create a profitable invention to pay for his education. And he was caught up in costly patenting rights with his partners in the sale of the cotton gin. So he really didn't make money on the cotton gin. I understand the underlying issues with the cotton gin, but I think it was created to make the process faster, but unfortunately that speed increased the need for more slaves to grow and plant and pick the cotton. Whitney himself, he was only 60 years old when he died, so he really didn't live to see the ways in which his invention would change society for the worse. I don't think that was ever in his mind when he made the cotton gin. And he also was known for creating muskets for machines that were interchangeable parts that were made on machines. And his wealth came from manufacturing those muskets, not the cotton gin. So there's a lot of history with him. I think, there were things too that I found where white and African American men worked together in the state legislature. Some were names like Edwin Walker and John James, along with Charles Mitchell, whose ward, he was African American, whose ward was the wealthiest in the state. But these men fought together in a war to end slavery, and with the technology, they used Whitney's musket parts. The North Army fought the South and won the Civil War using his guns. So it's just interesting, I just don't want to see this man torn down, but I understand what everyone is saying. Anyways, I guess I'm just looking at reasons that people may ask why we want to remove him from the seal, or remove the cotton gin from the seal. But that also kind of removes a part of this man's history. I guess if we look at other seals in other communities and, just try to see what it is that people find important, what they take pride in, how we can, if that's what the town wants to do, remove that from the seal. This thing with the logo is interesting. I like that. So I think that's something we should look into. But overall, I think I just don't want to see, we're getting rid of that history, because that is something that Westboro has. And this is a man who, yes, he created something, but I don't think that was his intent, was to harm anybody with his creation. I think it was just something that was asked to be made. He made it, and he also made the musket, and that helped win the fighting against slavery. So in his head, I don't think there was thoughts of anything malicious or evil to do to people. So I guess that's really kind of what I wanted to just everyone to keep in mind, because it is something of pride for a lot of people in town that he's from here. And so, to just wipe him out, I don't know that that's a good thing either. But that's up to the people of Westboro to decide. And I personally think the seal's kind of ugly, but it doesn't do anything for me. But I don't have a problem with it either. So, anyways, that was all I just wanted to say. And I guess
Could I ask you some follow-up questions
Yeah.
on that? One question is, you said something that I wrote down as a direct quote. You said Eli Whitney was a source of pride for all of us living in Westboro.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My children are Black and are well aware of what a cotton gin represents, thanks to, Black history courses that they've taken in their tender years. They're only 8 and 11, but they know. For children like my children and their friends, do you think Eli Whitney is a source of pride?
Probably not, but I don't know. I doubt they would be if they looked at that. But I'm just saying this is what it was. And so now we have, you want to erase all
I
of
don't.
the history.
I don't want to erase.
But I understand if that is a symbol of something, horrific. I get that, I do get it. I think it's hard to take away, we weren't looking at it as kids. I mean, I was a kid and I didn't look at the cotton gin as something horrific.
I'm sure you didn't.
I just looked at the man that created it and his name was in the book. That's
So-
all.
On that point, one thing I would say as an historian, one of the things I always tell my students is that if you look at textbooks 50, 100 years ago, it's a radically different narrative and kind of interpretation of the past than what we have today. This is kind of a staple of history, is that it's not a kind of set body of facts, but the present shapes the way you look at the past, right? And so in some cases it's because we don't have information 50 years ago that we have now, right? In some cases it's because our moral compass is different from people in the past, right? So I think that's one reason why there would be that kind of disconnect between someone looking at this 50 years ago and someone looking at it today, right? One of perhaps many reasons. I think it's important, one of the things I looked at before today's meeting was what are history textbooks, what does the Massachusetts State Curriculum say about the cotton gin today? And it's not so much in a history of innovation, invention. There's no connection of Eli Whitney to the invention of the musket or the arms industry or the Civil War. If you look at the Mass State Curriculum, I've got a copy, I'll send it out to folks, but it basically locates the impact of the cotton gin on the economics of Southern agriculture and slavery, and sort of within a kind of narrative of the economic expansion of cotton growing and resultantly slavery, right? So I think that's why today it's extremely difficult, I think, for children, if they're reading and paying attention in school, it will be really difficult for them to see the cotton gin as something that was this kind of brilliant technical innovation, as opposed to something that was directly related to the expansion of slavery and the attendant consequences. So I think there's just a little bit of historical context that to help us understand why there would be different points of view depending upon perhaps generations is just one factor.
But what we're also saying too is what I just heard from you that was eloquently put was that Eli Whitney was not an evil person. Eli Whitney is not on the town seal. One invention of his is on the town seal. His person is not on the town seal. His face is not on the town seal. We're not celebrating him. We're celebrating a gadget, right, that has a very complicated history. So we're not putting a musket on there that helped win the Civil War. And that's a significant path to travel from viewing this town seal that has directly on it what the Smithsonian recognizes as a symbol of slavery, right? To get from there to Eli Whitney's intentions and his other inventions that helped win the Civil War, right? So even if we, decide to still venerate Eli Whitney and put his face on the seal, to satisfy what you were saying,
Well, no,
the
that's
cotton,
not really what
but
I'm
the
saying.
cotton gin is not that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Some very talented scientists, an analogy with that would be some very talented scientists participated in the creation of the atomic bomb, right? But if we wanted to celebrate those scientists, we wouldn't necessarily celebrate the atomic bomb itself for all the pain it caused.
No, that's right.
Right.
I
I'm just
agree
gonna
with you.
I'm just gonna interject. I think what we're doing now, or what the committee's doing now, is like a early precursor of the discussions and deliberations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we understand that there's gonna be people with different points of view. But just to make sure we don't lose track, and I don't mind, I'm not, Wendy made her comments because she wasn't here when Mr. Weber was here. And I think her point, the launch point was to be careful or to be thoughtful and deliberative about what's on the information the information session presentation, and about leading people to particular points of view. But I think for this meeting right now, it would be better for us to go back, or better for you, the committee, to go back and focus on including what was in this discussion, focus on the content for the information and the context in which public information is going to be gathered. And then just remember this conversation is probably a microcosm of many conversations that will be in listening sessions in the months that come.
I think what Wendy's, tell me if I misspeak, Wendy, but I think what she's saying is that if we concentrate on certain aspects of the seal, we're leading the discussion as opposed to just placing the facts out there. And that we don't want to do that. And I'm sure that there are different members of the committee have different stances on this seal and what it should or shouldn't represent or what it should or shouldn't say. But we have to be careful that we're not, by the questions, and I think all of us know, if you have a survey, how you ask a question or how you state something is going to lead people to an answer. If you want a certain answer, if you ask the question a certain way, you're going to get the answer you want. And so we need to be very careful in terms of even just giving that history, as you just said, the same history. I mean, when I was very much a student of history, and I always loved the part about the Crusades, because what they left out, as far as I was concerned, is they left out the fact that as the Crusaders marched through Europe, they would very casually wipe out each Jewish community as they came to it. I don't know how many of you knew that, but I certainly knew it. And every time we talked about the glorious Crusades, I would go, oh yeah, they really were. They were just wonderful. As they wiped out all the Jews on their way to Israel. So it's there. You have to be careful that you just presented. Well, none of you are old enough to remember Dragnet. Just the facts. Just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts. And the facts of the cotton gin and what it did and what it represented, but the fact that Eli Whitney was an innovative technological genius of his time. That's also a fact. The fact that his technology led to something else is there, and people will know.
So I think that right. So every summer at the Harvard Summer School, I teach a course titled Political Communication, which grapples with these matters of framing, agenda setting, priming, and things like that, right? Which is very pertinent here. And I think what Phyllis, what you're talking about is there's a way to egregiously frame questions that would produce an answer that you want to hear, right? So for example, the quintessential example of that is, how do you feel about death penalty given that it removes, horrible offenders who murdered innocent children and whatever else from the population, right? Chances that someone would respond, I feel good about that, are far higher if you ask it like that instead of asking it, how do you feel about the death penalty given that it's racially biased, tends to be racially biased, and in many cases tends to kill an innocent person whose guilt was not even proven, right? So that's the egregious framing example. However, what falls into the middle of all surveys is things that are impossible to not frame one way or another. It's going to be impossible, literally impossible for us to avoid some kind of framing. Framing happens every time we open our mouths. Framing happens every time we write something down. So it's going to be unavoidable for us. Whenever we start listing facts, then the question becomes, why did we list these facts and not other facts, right? What we need to focus on here is the relevant facts. And the relevant facts are facts that have to do with what are we communicating with our seal to the world, because that's primarily the purpose for the town seal, right? It's a single snapshot, an image representation of our town, and we want that image to be communicating with people across time and space, right? Because presumably, whether we choose to keep this town seal or change it, it's going to stick around for some decades, likely. And it's going to be used, to every time somebody pulls up the website. So we could include, of course, I think it would be relevant to include that he was an innovator by the standards of his time, but we absolutely cannot avoid listing the facts about the impact on slavery, listing the impact on how the object of the cotton gin is currently viewed by everybody else other than Westboro. By the Smithsonian, by the African American Museum in Washington, D.C., all of these, what do other people see or think when they see our town seal? We cannot not include that. And while we're including these facts, hey, it's going to come out, it's going to look to sound like we're biased. And I don't think there's a way to avoid that. To go back to this list of three slides, I think that the first one is very easy to make, right? So that very first slide would be just the easiest to type out. The history of the town seal is the one we're now currently hung up on, right? Because this is where my suggestion is that we include Tony's speech in its entirety and some additional information, some of these facts, some of the facts that Ian mentioned, and some of the facts that Phyllis mentioned. But we need to be thoughtful sort of about the body of those facts that will go into that second part.
Did you folks receive the information I emailed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I know we couldn't discuss it, but I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
was there. There's a bit of me that, as far as like talking about the facts, I agree with you, Alan, that what you decide to include is going to bring forth decision bias. That it is very, very difficult to try to not to present facts that are unbiased. It is tricky to do that. And I know, like, when I put together that list of here are the dates, here are here are his factual information. I thought it was helpful that when Tony Baber put forth, like, here's where the seal comes from. This is when it came about, like more of a timeline. I thought that was beneficial. And I would suggest that we think of providing that background information, because ultimately, let's say that if the decision by the town meeting is to change the seal. Okay, let's say the recommendation from this committee is to change the seal, if that was the case. I've been of the opinion that to just then eliminate it entirely, the current seal, and to have it vanish from Westboro, I don't think that serves the community either. That I thought for a long time that it would be best to take the seal that was created in 1913, the seal that was adopted by the community in 1977 through Article 41, take both of those and put them as a piece of the town history, with an explanation about what this seal was, why it was created, and then a couple of sentences about explaining how it became a source of controversy as we got into 2020. But I think Wendy makes an important point about not erasing any of this either. That it's part of the town history, right or wrongly. It's part of the town's history. It's been the seal for 50 years. So I'm more of the opinion that if we also look at that, I'm not sure that would be something to put into the slide presentation just yet, but I thought it was necessary to throw it out there to keep that in the back of our minds, that it, like anything else, the 1913 sale reached a point where the town decided it was time to change it. So here we are, 51 years, or 54 years later. Now it's, okay, maybe the community's going to say it's time to change it again. Fine. But the current seal is a part of the history of the community. Rightly or wrongly, it's part of the history of the community. And I think with all history, you can provide adequate description and context so that people 100 years from now would look back on this and be able to get some sense of what the community was thinking and why the community changed it. Now, I think that is something more that we could express at information gathering sessions.
This could be one of the questions, though.
I think it could be. I don't think it's necessary or proper to disparage Mr. Whitney's.
But no one's doing that,
Yeah,
Nick.
yeah.
Why is this?
Well, I'm just saying. I walked in. I apologize for being late again. I had a soccer match, etc. I heard the tail end of what Wendy was saying when I walked in here. That's why I'm saying this. I don't think disparaging Mr. Whitney's reputation. We have talked about this when Tony Vaver was here. I don't think that should be at all the focus. But I think it should be. I think we need to have some kind of a statement, perhaps, in the slides to express that that's not the intent of what we're trying to do. Again, because I think there will be residents who will think that we are trying to eliminate, we are trying to pretend like this didn't exist, or trying to not have it be there moving forward. That's where I'm coming from, Al.
I think Tony's statement deals with that too, right? He did talk about in the last session about how it's not erasing history, replacing one symbol with another, because there's a place for history in museums and archives and things like that. But I think that's a really good point, because we should probably address that. And I don't know if we should address that at the information gathering point or when we issue the recommendation, but it could be worked into part 3. This could be framed as a question initially, right? So something like if the town does end up replacing the town seal, then how do you feel like we could commemorate Eli Whitney in our archives, in our museums, with our local historians? What are some ways that we can remember his legacy?
Yeah. In other words, is a town sealed the only way or the best way to honor the fact that Mr. Whitney was born in Westboro?
I like that a lot.
Is that the only way to do it?
I also think on the first slide, the committee charge, we could have what the charge is, and then just a few bullet points on what our charge is not.
Right.
So we're not here to judge Eli Whitney's character, right?
Yeah, I like that. I think that phrases. I agree with you. I think that's an excellent way to phrase it. We're not here to judge Eli Whitney's character.
We could even say we're not here to erase him from history. I'm comfortable saying that because that's a really easy one to dispel.
I think what you said is to be very clear that we think there are other ways in which Eli Whitney's history with Westboro can be remembered, commemorated, and preserved without having a cotton gin on our seal.
And to go back to something John Arnold brought up at our previous meeting, if we frame that in the form of a question, are there other ways to do that?
Yeah,
We
or
need to
how
step over to it.
could we do it
Yeah.
other than on the seal, and actually get input from people on other suggestions on how you can in fact honor the history of the fact that Eli Whitney was from here, and that's wonderful, and it's a source of pride for Westboro. But there may be, what are other ways, not better ways, but what are other ways that we could in fact honor that history that is part of Westboro without having a cotton gin on the seal?
Yeah.
Which is not the best way, maybe, to honor him.
No, you're right.
Thank you for, clearly you put a lot of thought into that and writing out, and even doing some research, and so I really do appreciate you sharing that, John, you're absolutely right. That's the kind of thing that ideally, when we would have our listening sessions, we would get a lot more of. So I really do appreciate that. This is the kind of thing that it's just not doesn't allow for it at town meeting, right? Where it's a real, true exchange of ideas, right? What's the rule, John? You can only speak twice on the same topic.
Yeah,
And I get
without permission of the meeting.
That's right, so, and I get that. So when I see this history of the seal, that's what I wrote down as you recapped it. Maybe it's actually that, it's not the history of the cotton gin. It's basically, here's what the old seal was, and look, there's a tradition in Massachusetts where it's changed occasionally, here's where it's changed, and anyone who would show up at a gathering that we would try to host, and hopefully it's well attended, is gonna have thought about this deeply, or they're curious to learn more. So I think, not in a semantics way, if we envision our job is to hear people out, get more of what you just did. And there's probably a lot of passion and thought and ideas out there that my limited view of the world hasn't even thought of. I think it is an impossible task, and it's not in the way the world works. Like, can we remotely teach people about the cotton gin in a balanced way? It ain't gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen. So maybe, because we could talk about this for another 30 meetings and not figure out exactly
Right.
what images and what can't. So let's have people gather together, like the seal is being under discussion as to change, has the cotton gin on it. And at that point, if someone shows up with a question, as you said, we as historians, some of us and teachers, et cetera, and just citizens of the town could do our best to answer it from my perspective. For instance, if someone came in completely blind, having no idea of the context of the cotton gin, I think I could give a, kind of like what you did, just here's where it is. A view of it in the past was more this, but we're on our track here to become a minority majority country, and it means different things to different people. What we're really here to talk about is these more bigger questions. So I'm sort of dreading the idea of like, let's figure out how we would come up with a neutral slideshow for people. I just don't think we can do that. But a series of questions that we're actually really honestly interested in hearing from people that show up would be, I think, a valid use of it. And at that time, there could be that exchange of like, listen, I've been teaching history for 23 years. This is what I've come to know about it. And by all means, take that information, marinate on it, and when we have town meeting in a few months, please vote your conscience, right? So that maybe the history of the seal slide would be as easy potentially as the committee charge. Now, I think sharing that speech is a great idea.
Okay.
Or maybe if there's a way in the community advocate where it's a QR code and it brings people right to the video of him reading the speech, because he did it so eloquently, right? So we would, as they say, good poets need good audience, right? I mean, good poets need a good audience. The people would show up wherever they are on this. I'd love to hear them out and pass on what knowledge I have. But ideally, they're showing up with some thoughts of their own, having done their own digging and research, right? So I guess I'm trying to give us a break here. Committee charge, we got the info right there. History of the seal, here's some time. You'd be a great person to help anyone understand how it's used, right? You've been doing it your whole career. And like, we're gathered here as fellow citizens that care about how our town is represented to the wider world. Let's have a conversation. Here are some questions we've thought of. If you have any other questions on your own, we'd be happy to start with those. As you know, in the classroom, the best conversation is one that's emanating from the student's question.
So,
Right, so that's all I'll have to say for right now.
yes, but I'm a big fan of the Socratic method. But I think that we would be shortchanging the community, and I would feel like we didn't really do our work, the work that we had been tasked with, if we didn't provide some information in the other direction. I think what you're making an argument for, well, is to keep that information on the shorter side. But I don't think that I'm on board with completely nothing, right? So we could maybe come up with, I mean, even if it's a slide of brief facts, right? But we are uncovering facts here and putting them all into, we're tabulating them, collating them, organizing them, classifying them, putting them all into the same space. intellectually, because we're in conversation about this. We're basically doing the dirty work for everyone. We're doing the research and the analysis and the conversation and the historical research and stuff like that, right? So if we don't give that back to the people, then what the heck did we form this committee for?
No, I think we could do that. I misspoke if the idea was that people would just come in blind. But I think most effectively, it would be somehow accessible prior to our gathering. So someone that wants to do a little of their due diligence, we've done the grunt work for them. Here's a good link to, the National Review and Smithsonian and National Geographic, like, here's kind of the history of it and some links and whatnot. And I love people to kind of dig into that a little bit. For us to try to do it live while someone shows up, I think probably won't work. But, we can answer it on the fly there, but, so I think it's trying a happy balance between nothing and like so overloaded, no one's really gonna look at it anyways, right? So a summary, a laying on the table of, by all means, take a look at these sources. It's not an exhaustive list, and we try to be balanced in the angles that they come from. It'd be neat to show some images of what textbooks said in 51 years ago, when the seal was redesigned, what knowledge was easily accessible. I think that would be kind of the type of thing. So I'm all for that. Yeah. So I didn't mean to just anyone who would come to our gathering wouldn't have any context. I think it's our duty to give them some.
But you're saying instead of a slide, something printed that people can pick
Yeah,
up
I mean,
and
if
hand out?
it's on the chairs, and as people show up, it's you know what I mean?
Perfectly
And-
fine, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I think a transcript, well, I think actually Tony David read from that
Right.
document. I think a printed availability, or like and yes, we could also do it through a QR code
Yeah.
too. Because I do think there will be some people who come because they're curious, and while they're sitting there listening to other people speak, they'll want to read. That would give them some context
Yep.
for what they're
I wanna
providing.
back up on that QR code, though, you're gonna have people who show up who won't even know what a QR code
That's
is.
true. No, you're right.
100%.
We need to
You
back
said
up and
QR code,
remember
and I
that
thought,
the
well,
use of technology is
Right.
wonderful, but you might have a third of the people who come in that don't even know what a QR
Right,
code
so
is.
a printed piece of paper is probably a better way
Could,
to go.
yes.
well, could
you
we
know.
persuade Tony to speak again at that meeting? Is that,
Well, it depends on how many meetings we have, we're not just gonna have one meeting.
Right,
We're
but
going
if
to
you
have
said the
multiple
initial-
meetings, I mean,
Right.
there's a limit to what we can ask him to do. Because basically it's on his own time, so
right, at
it's,
the initial meeting maybe? Because once we have people come out from the town, we have a unique opportunity to not just engage in dialogue, engage the current state of opinions, but to actually be able to persuade by relaying information, right? And that speech was passionate and that speech was eloquent, and I think that it would do a great service to many residents in this town to actually hear it live coming from him. So how are we gonna take advantage of that time with the residents? Are we going to try to have a bi-directional conversation, or is it just gonna be us sitting there listening to people be angry at each other?
So yeah, a QR code, so what I envision is whatever that would take you to, and you're right, not everyone's adept at that. I just got good at that with the COVID thing for my son's daycare. The article in the Advocate would say paper copy is available at these 5 locations. They'd be here as well, because some people are showing up to get info, and it's nice to have the takeaway. And we're meeting again next month, and we're all culminating in town meeting. So I've been keeping a folder, and I recently cut out the 2 letters to the editor and the most recent Community Advocate, and invariably the letter was about the changing, I think, in Shrewsbury, and the decision and the complaint was, I didn't hear that there was any meetings. So I want to do all we can to make that claim impossible.
Yeah,
Right.
I read that article
Yeah.
also in the Community
And so
Advocate. It was very
It talked about woke culture and cancel culture, and you made this decision, and you didn't tell anyone you were having these meetings.
Well, there was a larger, a broader article, news article in the Community Advocate that was critical of the school committee in Southborough, Northborough, that district. No, excuse me. No, it wasn't there. That it was in that time, that community, that there had been, that there was criticism that there had been inadequate public forums
Yeah.
to gather more information. And I was going to send that along, and instead then I got mired in sending the questions and the facts and everything, and what I thought was.
So I guess just, and go on.
No, all I was gonna say is just, I do think that kind of criticism is probably inescapable. Because if if ultimately this committee makes a recommendation in one direction and people disagree with that, then it's the public's right to then criticize that decision-making process. You know, to speak to that point, I mean, Tony Vavor's presentation that he did here is recorded on Westboro TV. I mean, it's been broadcast. That previous meeting we held has been broadcast on Westboro TV a few times. I would assume. It is there. If one's curious and one wants to find it out, fine. So I would say that as long as we are, and we have been so far, clear about our expectations of gathering information from the public and from the residents of the community, and being genuine about trying to do that. As far as like whether we're doing, we run into that fine question. We talked about this when we had the previous meeting, the most recent meeting. We'll know when we know how much, whether we need to have. I think initially we were talking. I think we're charged with 3 public meetings. Am I correct about that?
I don't know if there's a set number.
What was it?
Are we charged with?
No, just multiple.
I don't think
It's
Multiple, multiple, so more than one.
Yeah.
Let's say,
Multiple public forums.
so let's say we hold 3, I'll say that. We may know after 3, now we need to have 5. But the point is, I think that as long as we are open about it and we have this, fine. But we will get criticized.
Sure, no, you're right.
Okay, I don't think we should get mired down there, because that's inescapable in my opinion.
Well, just to keep this moving along then, so can we work on some of the logistical details for this? Do we have an idea of when we want to hold the first one? And then maybe we could figure out the process for determining the content of that packet that would be on everybody's seats.
Yep.
Because I think we're reaching the point where we're more or less in agreement about the general structure and outline of this initial meeting. So we just need to sort of set one, and then we have something to work forward to.
I'm gonna just since I'm still running the meeting, I'm just gonna play traffic cop here. It is 8:45. I think some of the conversation has started drifting toward that marketing plan. And I agree with Alla. I mean, so the question for me is, it's likely that the working out the information session information is gonna go on to the next meeting. I don't know if we can reach agreement here. So I can make a suggestion that we each, I think what I've heard is that there's this general belief that a shorter is better, sort of, information packet. I've heard that, and this is gonna be interpolating a bit, but what I've heard is it's hard to necessarily, come up with just a commonly accepted set of facts, but one of the things that I thought was, and this is a conglomeration of me listening, is, you wanna keep it short, and there's no way to avoid controversy. I thought an interesting way to maybe put it in terms of, is, what's in today's curriculum versus what was taught 50 years ago might sort of capture, the what's good and bad about this. And then the one new thing that I just want to interject as a member of the public who actually talked to a lot of people about this committee when I was forming it, is to just remind you, you may also want to list in the history or the town seal, there's actually 4 or 5 design artifacts. And it might be useful to list as part of the history of how it came about, sort of a design by committee. It may be useful to talk about the key elements are the town hall steeple, the map of the shape of the town, the pie crust shape, and the cotton gin. And then the committee could choose to mention that there was the second place that didn't have town seal, but just to mention that as the history. Because it could be, and I'll tell you just because I have talked to multiple people, it could be that some people just want to comment on whether they think it's a good seal or not. Some people, I've had some people tell me that they think it doesn't look good and that it looks like it was designed by committee. Some people think there's just too much going on. And so I would just remind the committee that the charge is the seal as a whole. And although my guess is that most of the conversation will be about the cotton gin, in terms of not leading people into what they want to talk about, you could actually just say, what do you know, here are the design elements. If you want to comment on what you think about them, there may be other things that come out from other people there. So I just wanted to mention that. Because that way it's not necessarily a referendum on the cotton gin, but it's a referendum on the town seal itself. And there may be people who don't want to get caught up in the cotton gin conundrum, but do want to comment about something else. So,
Yeah, I just to speak to that point, John, I have had people say to me, if you look closely at that seal, the comments have been, visually, it's too busy.
right,
Yep.
that's why I
Just-
think that one,
just
make
like
sure people
structural-
understand that.
Yeah, the comments I've heard is it's too busy. The other comment I've heard most frequently is, it looks outdated.
Yep.
Or antiquated would be my word, but outdated. I've heard that said frequently. So that, I mean, yeah, I think I think which is the point you make there, John, is really important, just to explain what the existing seal is.
And
yes,
actually encourage people to comment on any aspect of it they want, just so it doesn't look like it's just the cotton gin. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we all know what drove this conversation, but now that the topic is the town seal, I think it would be good for the committee to essentially, if you go to that thing of these are the questions we'd like answered, some of the questions could just be about, what is it that you do or don't like about it as a whole,
Right.
and just see where the conversation goes.
So list the 4 elements and.
Well, I mean,
and solicit.
let's see, I'll probably have it here
The
somewhere.
design elements as a whole, the
Yeah,
entire
because if
design
you look at
element.
it, so the design element, I mean, if you look at the thing I sent out, that when it was designed by committee, there was the steeple from
Yeah.
Town Hall, there's the backdrop of the map, there's the circle with the Westboro, Massachusetts Corporation, and the pie crust shape, and then there's the cup. So those are the main design elements, and so it might be useful just to call, when you're talking about the history of the town seal, it could be interesting to call those out. That's all my only point, I'm not gonna speak for or against that. And just in terms of keeping time, so another suggestion I'll make, and then hopefully this will be the last time I run the meeting, you won't have to listen to me quite as much. It could be that the best way to sort of carry over the content and information session is if there's general agreement that it's going to be, what's the charge, history of the town seal, and questions that the committee wants answered. Perhaps what would be good for homework is for each people to draft up, what do they think would fit on a handful of slides. Again, I think it was Ala who said, one of the things is to say, one of the ways to address is to keep it short. So maybe each person could think about what's the shortest way they can think of making their key points. And one thing would be pros of the cotton gin, viewed as innovative solution to a problem. Cons, it seems to have increased the economic viability of slavery. Think about it. If you think about the slides and these crisp bullet points, maybe one way to accelerate this would be for everybody to come up with a draft of what they have before the next meeting, and then share them with each other so you're ready to discuss and find the stuff that there's agreement on. Don't discuss outside the open meeting, but if everybody shares ahead of time, everybody can look like, oh, I like that idea, let's tease that out, or oh, I don't like that idea. You come ready to, dive right into specific content. That might help address the concern of, how do we do this quickly, or how do you do this quickly? So there's a suggestion.
I sent a copy of the original.
Hmm?
I sent a copy of our first.
Yeah, it was also in
seal.
It was in Tony's presentation,
Oh, it was.
too, I think so, but if not, you can send it out,
I
yeah.
think that's something maybe people should look at too.
Yeah.
Make it part of.
Yeah, well, I think I heard mentioned, the
Simple.
history probably showed what it was back in 1916 or 13, whichever it was, what it became, how this evolved in 67, how it got voted in 77, and then doing that. So, again, my job is to tell the committee what to do, I'm just trying to help provide some information, so. Does the committee want to talk more about any of that, or do you want to talk about the marketing plan, which is the next thing on the agenda? Yeah, and just trying to make it that we don't go too late.
I think it makes sense to move on. I would want us to select the chair
Yeah, I figured just since we're doing, I'm gonna do that right after this next.
Just so we don't have to keep
So, yeah,
forcing.
I haven't forgotten,
Yeah.
don't worry.
So the marketing plan that we're working on is for the initial meeting, right? Is that what we're working on?
My
at this point?
understanding when I created the agenda and put this on, the marketing plan is how do you get people to show up to the meetings? It's essentially marketing the committee's work. I mean, this is why I recognized that the conversation that Eric and Nick and you were having was drifting toward the, how do you let people know this committee is working? How do you get known that the
Yeah.
discussions are all out in the open? And how do you get people to come to these public forums? So I think that's what the market, that's what I meant, and that's the thought that I tried to capture from the last meeting. Because I think we moved toward that at the end of the previous meeting. It's just, regardless of what's in these information session packets, it's all meaningless if people A, don't know about them, or B, don't come and share their opinions.
Are we using the town website?
Well, I mean, there were discussions about, harkening back to the first meeting. I know Nick had mentioned, we talked about website, surveys, printed surveys, notices in in an upcoming tax bill, there's all these things. So I think it's really just an open discussion to revisit all those ideas, does anybody have some, and then to start thinking about the timing of all this.
Does anyone think we should focus on, and I'm asking a leading question, but I do, should we focus on the timing first before the marketing?
Yeah, I was just thinking, about to say the same
Well,
thing.
timing's gonna be interesting because we're halfway, we're approaching November. I don't know what kind of turnout we're gonna get for any public meetings in the next, up through the holidays, to tell you the truth. Because by the time we get our act together, and we get our questions together, and our presentation together, we're looking at Thanksgiving. And then between Thanksgiving and Christmas, to have a public meeting, I don't know how valuable that will be or not be. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, maybe people will be thrilled to have a public
be a good way
meeting
to
to go
test drive
to
the
instead of shopping for
Even
Christmas.
if you get small attendance, it could be a good way to test drive the material.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not
Knowing that you're
saying, I'm
going to
not
do
saying
more
we
in
shouldn't
January,
do
February,
it, but I'm just saying that, by the time we get all our stuff together, I don't see that we can do anything before the 1st of December. And then between the 1st of December and the 1st of January, just how much of a public meeting are you going to have? Although, as you say, a test drive would be a good idea, but then it's where do we test drive it?
All right, how about this? If we were a little more, I'm gonna propose something ambitious, and maybe, you have more experience with these committee, with this kind of committee work than I do, Phyllis, I'd say, in this town. What if, today's the 14th, what if we looked at, because I think it will focus the purpose of the group, to speak to Ian's point about like timeframe. How about, what if we looked, let's try to do this in, I was gonna say a month from now. Like, let's do this before Thanksgiving. Let's get this let's get this out and get this information out.
You mean a meeting, a public meeting?
A public meeting. Is it possible we can do that in the course of a month's time? Because I'm thinking that might get us, we've had good discussions at two meetings now, and we gathered a lot of good information. But I'm wondering if we did do that, it would give us, first of all, I think it would get us focused on what's gonna be on the slides, what questions do we wanna ask, what information needs to be there. And I just think that it might actually push us more to get going on this. And also, by doing this before Thanksgiving, we reduce the likelihood that there's a snowstorm,
Well,
okay?
we hadn't even talked about what
No, I'm just saying, so for example, let's say we instead said, oh, let's do this first week after Thanksgiving. We then start to run the risk of inclement weather. I think at minimum, if we were able to do this before Thanksgiving, then it would at least give us a chance to regroup after we see how that goes. And I also think it might energize us to be able to.
Well, the bottom line is it's gonna require us to meet,
More.
I was gonna say,
Thanksgiving,
probably
six-
at least once a week. Because in order to get this organized, polished, and ready to go, we can't have our next meeting October, whatever the heck it was,
28th.
28th. October 28th, and expect to do something before Thanksgiving. I
Right.
mean, you're saying, essentially what you're saying is we need to meet like once a week between now and let's say the second week of November, so that on the end of this, maybe the second week of November, the third week of November, we could have a public meeting of some sort.
Well, what's the, I mean, I'm bringing this up, what's your reaction to that? Is that?
I think that I'm on board with the ambitious plan, actually, and I don't think that we would need to meet weekly if we are diligent about doing homework. If we assign, sort of, if we lay out a series of steps that we need to accomplish, which are not that numerous, I don't think. I think we need to, broadly, we have a sense of what we want to do at this first meeting. We have the three things we want to communicate with the public about, right? We just need to really write them down. Once we write them down, the third portion of it, the questions, will be the longest. If we do much of this work at home before we meet next time on the 28th, then all we need to do on the 28th really is just approve, make sure we all agree with the content.
No, but that requires discussing it. If we all do our homework and we get our stuff together and we send it to each other and we look at it, we can look at it, but we can't conduct any discussions about it,
Right.
we can't
Right.
decide what we're going
But
to do.
we could do that.
That
at the
has
next
to be,
meeting.
well, that can be done on the 28th, but I don't know that that's one meeting. I don't know that one meeting's gonna come up with a presentation,
Well, let me
which is what you're essentially saying,
Yeah,
is
so,
the
okay.
28th, we come
I
up
think
with a
to
presentation.
Nick's point, if we set a date, we say, well, no, this meeting has to yield a presentation.
Right.
And, we kind of force ourselves, because the
Yep.
longer we sort of say, well, we'll come up with a presentation first and then set a date, I feel like we're just gonna keep belaboring the presentation itself.
Yes.
We're a group of 8 kids trying to work on a project together, and I'm the teacher saying, here's the deadline, okay, let's go, let's get it done, you know?
I see that my context for this meeting is really more about getting information versus us having everything that we're gonna
Right.
eventually over time give to them. We have, if all we have as far as on the chairs is the speech, and maybe we could, as far as part of our homework, if there are other valid, helpful things that could be tucked in underneath the speech.
Yes.
I meant to send out to the group email, there's an Outfit Mass Moments that has a day dedicated to Eli Whitney, and it's kind of a good broad overview for someone who doesn't know it. So maybe at that meeting, we could all look at those and say, this is not an official endorsement of the group, it's for someone who wants to learn more, it's in the folder. But I agree, I'd like to get some other people here and find out, kind of almost like, yeah, that's all well and good, that's what the town said for you to do, but I think it would be really helpful if you guys helped us understand ABC, and then our intervening meetings, we would maybe then do that. Like, I'm not really sure where really need to tell people, so I like the idea of that, a month from now. Or-
Dan, what do you think?
I think it's, I like it. I think like having a goal in mind is the first step towards having some sort of structure. And I like the idea of an ambitious goal.
And we could actually meet twice, the 28th, and then we would meet again
Right.
November 11th.
Exactly. So
And we set it for early, the week of Sunday, November 14th.
what would be even more important to finalize on the 28th is that marketing plan, right? Because we would need to do that work between the 28th and then in 2 weeks, in slightly more than 2 weeks when the meeting happens. So if we shoot for the meeting slightly past the 11th, then we have 2 meetings to do this work. Assume that we set the marketing plan by the end of the meeting on the 28th, conduct that work over this following 2 weeks. Meanwhile, we work on our content for the meeting, which, as you said, is not going to be that much, because the whole point of it is that it has to be succinct, right? Because it's a listening session. So on the 11th, we iron out the kinks and the content. So what do we think about something like the 15th or the 16th or the 17th, whichever, that following week?
Do you have your fingers there, Wendy, on the availability of the space over at Forbes, or?
I don't, but,
We can find that out.
we can
Yeah.
find out. If we look,
You said,
the
is it?
town website, the calendar is,
Oh,
if you
I
go
can
in the
look
town,
at it.
do you have that?
I'll try to
Town
look at it.
calendar.
Can I ask, I'm gonna just bring up a very practical thing here. why not meet a week, why do we have to wait 2 weeks to meet? Could we not meet a week from today? We could also set the agenda so that the meeting's gonna be shorter. So, for example, if we were to meet a week from today, with our purpose being, we're gonna get the slides done. We're gonna agree on what the content of the slides would be, just as an example. I would think the number of slides we're talking about is 4 to 5 slides at the very most, maybe 6 at the very most.
Not even
No.
3,
You know.
I'd say, otherwise we're losing them.
Well, that's what I mean, you know?
Yeah.
So, but what if we did that where the meeting wouldn't be as long? It doesn't have to.
One thing on the agenda.
We have one thing on the agenda.
Focus point.
Our purpose coming in is to talk about, because I think what would be a lengthy and really interesting conversation would be what questions to put on those slides, okay?
Right.
And I think that would be a really healthy discussion for us. Secondly, it's now that's recorded, it becomes public record, what we're gonna be doing, great. That might prompt other people, somebody who happens to see that meeting to say, hey, they missed this, there's something they missed. And we might hear from someone to say, hey, you missed this question. I mean, look, I brought this topic up with 2 sections of high school juniors who I teach with US history. They gave me a list of questions, and a couple of the questions that I sent to the committee germinated from those kids, from high school kids. I just think that and they were fascinated by this. I got asked today, what's been the next step? Dr. General, what's the next step? What's the next step? And I'm like, we're not there yet. And so I think it is. I think there's natural curiosity about this, which is a good thing. I think ultimately it'll be healthy for the community that we're having this discussion. So my suggestion would be, can we meet next week and we set the agenda where we meet for an hour?
I'm on board.
What do you think? Is that?
Yeah, I like that.
And I admit, I'm pushing this. I know I'm pushing here, but I just think that the sooner we get going with this, I think ultimately it's going to serve our work better. And then if we have to put the brakes on it, and look, it's much like how many meetings are we going to have? We might get to a point where like, whoa, this is going too fast. We got to slow down. And no, we're not going to be able to meet a deadline for whatever. What was it, the 15th of November or whatever? But and if that's the case, that's the case. But I'm of the opinion that we should proceed. We've been together now since the end of August.
Yeah. Should we vote on this? Like, to get a sense of who's on board?
Well, I think we should decide, first of all, can we meet next week?
Yes.
And second of all, if we meet next week, there are actually 2 things we need to be doing. One is, we could do as you say and just concentrate on the slides.
Mhm.
Or we could, if we don't do it tonight, we have to figure out how to market and to whom we're marketing it and what the target audience is. Because we haven't even discussed the target audience for that first meeting. I mean, if you have a meeting at night, you're going to
That's
miss.
eliminating, yeah.
You're by definition you're missing a certain segment of the population. If you meet on a Saturday afternoon, you're missing a certain segment of, so part of it is, the marketing to whom, so we need to do the marketing idea and we need to do the presentation itself. So for next Thursday night, what would be the focus and can people make next Thursday night? I think we have to decide on the focus and can people meet next Thursday night?
But let's start there. What do you think about next Thursday night? If we still struck at, do you want to do it a little earlier? Next week I do not have the soccer match. Just put it this way.
That's what he keeps saying.
And, no, I'm almost done with it. I promise I'm almost done with it. The 28th
Yeah,
I do
then
have.
you're gonna switch to ice hockey.
No. The 28th I have the last one, but
Okay.
what if we even met just a little bit earlier? We could meet at 7:15 and go till 8:15 a week from tonight. What do you think? Is that
I'm
does anybody need? Is that?
That's fine with me.
I'm unsure. probably couldn't do earlier, and I'm unsure if I can make it.
Because-
Oh, that's
but-
right, you
but-
have trouble
Right,
getting
but so
in.
7:30 would still work for you though?
I'm not sure about just next week in
Okay.
general.
All right. Everybody else, no, yes?
Jenna,
Yeah, I'm good.
yeah,
Or is there other days of the week would work better? There's no reason it has to be Thursdays.
True.
You need 2 days to post, so.
Wednesday would probably work better. Yeah, true.
How would Wednesday work for you folks?
I may not have a car.
My kids have piano
I
until 6:30.
don't, I might be able to, my partner and I are trying an experiment. We went down to one car. And the COVID made it easy, but now it's becoming more complicated.
Gotcha, yeah.
So, I know
We
he
can
has
arrange,
some,
if all you need is a ride, we could probably.
yeah, I may need a ride if Phil needs the car next
Okay.
Wednesday night.
Yeah.
There is something on the calendar for him, but
Mhm.
if I could get a lift.
I'll pick you up.
Oh,
I can do it, yes.
I can do Wednesday. Yeah,
Wednesday?
he actually
What
has
time?
2 things that night.
Probably 7:30
Wait to see what he
to
says.
Ian.
And what time would you prefer?
7:30.
7:30 to 8:30.
Would Wednesday be okay?
Well, it's fine with me, except that
Okay.
I won't have a
Fine.
car.
All right, so
One of these
that's,
days, we may buy a second car again, but so far, we haven't
We
run
did- we
into
did the
something
same
like
thing
this.
For a year during the pandemic.
What?
We did the same thing, we ditched a car during the pandemic.
Yeah, well,
It was
we
great.
found that it's still working, but it's getting more complicated now that
Yeah.
things are open.
so then the second point would be, what will now be the agenda for that meeting? If we need to motion and vote, well, I'm happy to do that, but I would propose that we center ourselves on what the content would be of the
Okay.
slides first. Because I think once we do that, then, because the marketing and who to contact, I think that's gonna be a lengthier conversation also. So that,
But the reality is we're gonna have some day meetings and some night meetings and some Saturday meetings, so.
Yeah, we're gonna have to.
So we're not gonna be able to hit all of them. I would say we probably, what I envision is the first one would be an evening meeting, just to keep with the cadence of our lives, and we definitely will not stop and end there and only have night meetings, but I think we need to belabor that point. We don't have anything to market until we have the slideshow.
so that's my thinking.
Next
So
week's the slideshow.
I think slideshow next week, and we figure out what that will be. And to speak to Ala's point, let's try to center our attention on creating content for 3 slides.
The only thing I'd say with marketing is like, if we're trying to market 2 weeks out, the deadline for marketing is 2 weeks earlier than it is for slides.
Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying.
When I heard marketing, I thought we meant like spread the word, like tell people we're meeting.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I,
I think
The way I
marketing means
that's what
spreading
I
the word, and actually, 2 weeks is not a bad time frame, because if you're too far out, people forget about it.
Okay.
That's right.
And if you're too close, people are already booked with something else. 2 weeks is kind of a sweet spot for letting people know
And I
that there's a
think a key
meeting
point-
in 2 weeks.
I think a key point will be, this isn't the only one, this is really,
Well,
this is really
absolutely.
the initial,
No, absolutely.
initial, dry
we
run
just
of
make-
what the
make- and we
committee's gonna
just
be
make that
doing, and
clear.
that people can expect more
So
later
then,
on.
so then if we do it in that order, we're meeting next week on the 20th, that means that the following week we're not meeting, right?
No, we'll still meet the
We'll
following week.
still meet the following week on the
because-
28th.
Because if we come up with the slides next Wednesday,
Mhm.
the following Thursday, the 28th,
Mhm.
we can come up with where's the meeting gonna be, what times are gonna be, who's gonna do what, who are we gonna market to, how are we gonna get the word out? So we still need the meeting on the
Okay.
28th for that.
Okay. But then we have another-
Like next week is just like.
Next week just be the
Yeah.
slides, but then
And
the following week,
can be another,
well, it doesn't necessarily have to be a small meeting, but the 28th meeting, we have to do that on the 28th, what, if we do anything else. We may not have anything else we need to do, but, yeah,
but at
But
least
then-
this meeting on the 19th would be,
the 19th of what?
20th.
The
I'm
20th.
sorry, I misspoke, the 20th, sorry.
But then between the 28th and the presumed date of this public forum, which would be the week of the 15th, we still have 2 weeks to fill with some activity. So what do we do there? If we have done everything in the last 2 weeks of October, marketing and content, then what are we discussing and doing in the 2 weeks leading up to the meeting?
We don't have any meetings scheduled in November yet.
Right, which I think what she's saying is that between the week of November 15th and October 28th,
Right.
there's a chance that the committee could meet if there's things to do. I think is what you're saying.
I just
Wait,
assumed,
yeah.
because so far we've kept the rhythm of 2 monthly meetings, so I just
Yes.
assumed that we would have a meeting in November too,
Right.
right? But then if we are meeting on October 28th, then we still have a meeting.
On Veterans Day.
Yeah.
technically.
Basically, the 11th would be our
You
Right.
may
next.
want to avoid
Right.
Veterans Day since people have it as a day off. I mean, there's no need, you can't meet then, but you don't have to meet then.
So then our next meeting would be the public forum, the week of that following week.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
You'd also have two meetings to see, are there things to talk about? Again, you can,
Well, on the 28th, we could decide
That's
if we
what-
really need
either-
another
yeah, next
meeting
week or-
before the public forum. If we decide we don't, then we just go straight to that week of the 15th of
Okay.
November when we will schedule a public forum for some night that week.
That works with me.
Okay.
and I think in the next two meetings, you'll know whether there's still tweaking to be done. It could be, you know, I mean, the way again, I'm just summarizing what I hear is that next week, focus on content, not necessarily how it looks, because you'll have a meeting. And if you walk away with these are the key points, then if one or two people want to volunteer to put it in a nice PowerPoint or presentation format, we don't have to worry about what it looks like, but it's what does it have. The 28th, you can talk about what it looks like, and it could be that they'll be like, oh, we need to tweak it more. And then you could either decide
we have
the
to
time of the
schedule.
28th, or do you want another meeting? Because remember, the handout doesn't have to be ready until that week of the
Right,
15th,
and-
so.
That works.
Then we
Yeah.
would have the public forum some night the week of
The one thing I would suggest, I mean,
15th.
I took a look at the town calendar, right now the town calendar doesn't have many meetings in
on the week
November.
of the 15th.
So I would say perhaps people should look at their calendars the week of the 15th and see if there's nights that do or don't work, so maybe Wendy could work to try to find a room. Because I'm thinking the Great Hall of the Forbes Building is the largest and would allow people to be most spread out. The second place is probably Memorial Hall at Town Hall. And then the third place would be here, so, but if we wanted to choose a prioritization of which days of that week, that would get the meeting in before the week of Thanksgiving, and try to maximize the number of people that can be there.
All the nights work for me that week.
For the next meeting?
No, this is for the meeting, the meeting for the public, the
Oh,
first
public
public
forum.
forum is what I'm
The
talking about.
public forum.
I mean, we can try to find a room for next, we'll find a room for
I mean, I
next
think we
Wednesday.
could probably get here.
Probably do. Are there any nights that are bad for the week of November 15th?
No, all nights work for me, so just, yeah, I'm
Yeah, there's one
flexible.
day for me, that's parent-teacher conference.
Which one?
You just took the words out of my mouth. I think, I just have to check that too.
The 18th you
The
can't do?
18th of November, yeah.
Okay, so,
That's parent
okay, that's fine, we got 4 days to work with, we don't want to do Friday.
If we aim for that Wednesday, the 17th.
Well, I can't, we wouldn't do it on a Friday night anyway.
No, I know, that's why I said
But I
there's 4 to
can't
choose
do,
from,
I
so.
can't do Friday night, so
Yes.
that's
So then it's just the 16th or the 18th?
So, yeah, you said the 15th was bad, Ian?
15,
No, I
16.
was saying, what if we aim
I
for the
can't do the
17th?
18th.
That's
Oh,
right,
okay,
yeah.
let's do the 17th. How about the 17th for everyone?
It seemed like Wednesday nights,
I
because next week
can't,
seemed.
I can't that whole week, but
Oh,
So Tuesday
Are
night,
you- are
or
you-
I
16?
have a conference at.
No, no, but the 17th so far works for,
No, she just said it
Are
doesn't.
you
but
okay
the
with
whole
that?
week doesn't work for
We
her.
can
Oh, the whole week
record it
doesn't
or
Yes, the
whatever.
whole week.
Yeah.
If we have the.
Oh, yeah, I can do that.
What night?
So Wendy says she's out the whole week at a conference, but she says it's okay for her to just watch
Okay.
the replay. And she'll be here to know what's in the presentation.
Eric, Dan,
So
what do you
So
want?
did I hear, I was talking to Wendy.
17th is fine. That's
Yeah.
all week is fine for me.
So,
The 17th? 17th?
Yep,
so you want to target November 17th?
I'm gonna say yes for now. I gotta just, I mean, we can have it without me.
This was your idea, sir.
I know it was my idea. No, I'm just trying to look at my school's calendar. Just to make sure.
Okay, well, we know it's not the 18th, so the 18th is bad, we're there, just in case we have to wait for Nick to get back to us.
17th
Hold on,
is not ideal.
I'm just trying to log in. I can't, I'm having trouble getting onto it.
Oh, did you get onto the
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 Wi-Fi?
Wi-Fi? Do you know, the
Behind you.
Wi-Fi password is behind you
Oh.
on the whiteboard. If you like, it's WFD get.
I didn't know that. I've been
Yeah.
using the hotspot.
No, okay.
Here, hold on. I'm just trying to.
Try that.
Goodness.
If the 18th is the only day that we can do it,
No,
because like, we're only doing conferences with just me this year instead of my partner
Right.
teacher,
Yeah,
I would probably shift and have my parents come in at
a
different.
different night, all right, well, we'll see how it goes, so let's just see how this goes.
The 17th isn't ideal for me, that's the night the historical commission meets. Phil,
Tuesday,
Those ones
16th,
start.
everybody, who can't do Monday? Can everybody look and see who can't do Monday the 15th?
Monday the 15th, I can do that. I can, now, I'm looking now. I can do Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday that week.
Okay,
Monday or Tuesday are best for me.
okay, so now we're not doing one, okay, so the 18th was out for a couple people. So Nick, so let's just go, Eric, do you have any preference of the week of the 15th?
I don't know.
Okay. Dan,
No preference, it all works.
Nick,
No, it's the same thing, I'm fine.
you're fine?
Literally every day works for me.
Okay, Ian?
Pretty much any day but the 16th.
Okay, so not the 16th. Phyllis, you said not the 17th?
It's not great. I could make it work, but
Well, I mean, we got
Monday
Monday,
or Tuesday.
Monday the 15th, I mean,
On Monday or Tuesday.
is Monday the 15th okay? I mean, it gets it early for,
Monday the 15th.
you can do one?
Yeah, I can do
Oh.
Monday the 15th.
Oh, okay.
Oh, all right, let's do one.
Okay, let's do the 15th then. And Ian, I'm assuming you'd still prefer the 7:30 start?
For the, yeah, 7:30 is great. If we have to do 7, that's fine.
Okay,
Sure.
so you could just arrive late if you, okay.
Yeah.
Do people, in order to, in terms of getting people out, I mean, the good thing about 7 o'clock is that you can either skip dinner, not that it's a good thing, or you can have dinner and immediately go out. The bad thing about 7:30 is that you might say, oh, I'll just get this one thing done, and then you lose track of time and you get there late. So if it's gonna be posted for the 15th, do people wanna post 7 o'clock, a 7:15, or a 7:30 start? What do people-
7 o'clock works.
7 o'clock sounds.
Seven.
Yeah, I would
And-
say
and
so.
you
People are
can just-
used to 7 o'clock.
Yeah, that's the rhythm.
That kind of is a standard
Okay.
time.
Yeah, it used to be 7:30, but back about 20 or 30 years ago. So so we're not that it has to be posted yet, but in terms of Wendy trying to get a room, Monday the 15th at 7 o'clock, Wendy?
Yes.
Can you try to get a room tomorrow, one of the big rooms?
Yeah,
Okay,
so that's November,
that's November 15th, yeah.
okay, and you want me to,
Try to, yeah, I would say Forbes is
Okay.
Forbes Memorial Hall and here would be the top 3,
okay.
and if that doesn't work. Okay. So everybody seems to be okay with Monday the 15th?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I mean, it's now 9:20. So I think it's probably best to just try to start wrapping up. So we don't have to wait for the draft minutes. And so I will work with whoever the elected chair is to post a meeting for next Wednesday at 7:30, right? That's what we agreed on? So that's Wednesday, October 20th at 7:30, and Wendy, you'll try to get here, and if not here, some other
Yeah.
room, is that okay?
Yeah.
And I will try to send out a reminder, but the big thing, I think it would be best if everybody tried to draft up what they think should be on those slides. If people want to send them to me, so I can forward them to committee, so I can forward them to the committee, that's fine. If you wanna send them to that town seal review committee, I'll just let people know if you haven't done it yet. There's still a problem with the way Outlook.com processes Eric's email address, so I have to send him email directly. If when you send to the list for some reason, there's some email system. They're willing to work, the town, Mark Stockman in the town office said he thinks there's a setting you can set.
Okay.
So he's willing to try to help you work with that, but I know how it works. So if you get a bounce back message from Eric when you send to town seal review, just send it to him directly. So I will implore everyone to just spend as much time as you can on that homework. And we're going to we're leaving open also having the meeting here on the 28th at 7:30. Okay? I'm going to remind everyone that Monday there's a special town meeting, so if you want to bring some paper and do your homework while you attend the town meeting. For those of you who haven't been to town meeting ever or not recently, it might be good for you to go just to see what town meeting's like. I know most of my spare time between now and Monday is going to be getting ready for that because I have to come up with my notebook to make things run smoothly. There's 22 items on the agenda, I believe, and hopefully we'll get done on Monday, but if it's not done on Monday, it's going to carry over to Tuesday.
What's it, 6 o'clock?
It starts at 7 at the high school.
7.
And now I would like to move to committee organization. As I've talked about in the previous 2 meetings, the chair essentially is responsible for running the meetings, posting the minutes, and posting the meetings with the agenda with the town clerk's office, and I'm sure Wendy or I can help come with that. The vice chair assists the chairman and serves in the chair's place, and the secretary drafts the minutes, and I'll work with the secretary to show how after you draft the minutes and after they get voted, how they get turned into final minutes sent to the town's clerk's office for the record. I guess so is there anyone here who would be interested in being chair of the committee?
I'll volunteer.
Okay, all right, so Al and Nick both raised their hands. interesting to
There
have.
must be only one.
Is there anybody here who wants to be vice chair? Because maybe we can have Ala and Nick decide amongst themselves.
Don't rock, paper, scissors, best of three.
We'll do that.
Ala and Nick, would you have a preference for who's
Take a
chair, who's
quarter
vice
off.
chair?
It doesn't matter to me.
No.
What, do you wanna be chair, I'll be vice chair, do you wanna do it that way? I'm fine about that, I'm happy to do it the other way, it doesn't matter, whatever the committee's preference. My
I'm thinking
feelings
to
will
myself,
not
somebody
be,
take out a coin and flip it.
it doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, I don't think it matters. I mean, I think it really comes down to what the committee, I don't want to put it, I want to put something up for a vote. I mean, does,
We should come up with some slogans real quick to
I guess the question is both of you have long distinguished
What?
careers. Anybody been a chair, or you like just thinks that it has more time, comes more naturally, or whatever?
I think we have the same skill set
We
and the
do,
same
yeah, that's fine.
background. I feel like we would substitute for one another perfectly.
I know, I feel awkward here.
Yeah.
Well, it's very, yeah. it's
Yeah,
okay.
no, it's
I've
fine.
never been in a committee where two people have wanted to be chair before. It's like a first.
Doesn't matter, it does not matter to me at all, so,
Shouldn't this be the decision of the
Yeah, it should be.
committee?
I just didn't know if you, okay. Okay, all right. Well, I just didn't want to put an awkward position again. I want
Oh, well,
everyone to
we
know,
have to vote
it's
on
not that it's not a vote for or against people or personalities. Well, first of all, why doesn't somebody nominate, we need a motion, so why doesn't somebody make a motion? Somebody want to move to make one of them chair? Nobody wants to do
Motion to nominate Nick as chair.
this. Okay, so.
And motion to nominate Ala as chair.
yeah, great.
Okay, wait, so Ian moves,
Why
Nick.
can't I make two motions?
It's best if you
They're
don't.
two conflicting
Does somebody want,
emotions.
so we have a motion to nominate Nick.
I'll
Does
second
anyone
that
want to
motion.
make a motion to nominate Olive, or do we want to just vote on that?
Well, Ian did that too. Ian made a motion for Ala to be chair too.
Oh, well, it's best if the
He's not
person
allowed
doesn't
to-
make
to
the
make-
motion.
Right, that's
Two
right, I forgot
contradictory
about that. This is silly.
Is that true in Robert's
What this,
Robert's rules?
Yeah,
this is silly. Ala, why don't you be chair? I will be vice chair. Let's just do it that way, okay? And I'm fine about that. I'm fine about that.
sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, are you okay with it?
So what I was gonna propose isn't it possible for us to trade that off as
Okay,
well?
co-chair?
To sort of to be rotating chair,
Oh, okay.
vice chair
That's fine too.
situation?
Oh, that's
Co-chairs,
co-chairs.
there you go.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Co-chairs.
Okay, I believe that's allowed. I don't think there's anything that says we have to have it, as long as that means you'll be sharing duties.
That usually means.
So-
So for example, when you were at a soccer game,
Yeah.
then I could chair, right? And if something comes up on my
Yeah,
end.
that's my only
So,
concern is
Ian, will you withdraw your motion?
I withdraw both
Okay.
motions.
So, Ian, would you like to make a motion to nominate them as co-chairs?
I would like to nominate Ala and Nick as co-chairs.
Second.
Okay, okay. And we will leave it between the two of you to politely figure out who one runs which meeting, or to trade off, or what have you.
Okay.
Any other nominations for co-chair? Okay, seeing no other nominations, I'll take a vote for the motion to make Ala and Nick co-chairs. All those in favor, please raise their hand and say aye. It's okay to vote for yourself, there's no shame in it.
Oh, we can vote for
You can
ourselves?
vote for yourself. I do it every election. Okay, so that was 8-0. Is there a motion for, anybody want to be secretary? Ian, you had indicated you'd be willing to do that?
Motion to make Ian secretary?
Okay, so
Second.
Nick moves for Ian to be secretary, and again, I'll provide any assistance for this, to both, and I'm sure that Wendy will provide any assistance in terms of what's necessary in terms of posting and getting minutes as well. Any other nominations for secretary? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of the motion for Ian to be secretary? All those opposed? 8-0. Congratulations. As of the next meeting, shall still, when I can, I will still try to be here. I will try to talk less, but I will thankfully not have to run the meeting. And so we've been through the agenda for the date, time, and place. It's 9:27. Is there any more? And again, special town meeting Monday night at the high school, 7 o'clock. Any other activity, any other business for the committee time?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Nick moves to adjourn at 9:27. All those in favor? 8-0. Thank you very much. Remember, please be diligent, as the point was made, the better you spend time on the homework, the better the conversation will go. and the better we have to reach things. Because it's always harder to start with a blank piece of paper, and if you have 8 or 9 pieces of paper to start with, I think it'll be easier to like take votes of which do you like best. So the more time you can spend with that, and if I have time, not that I will, but if I have time, I might take a stab at it and send it to you just as public input, just because I find these things fascinating and interesting. Not you paying attention to it. But. All right, thank you. Meeting adjourned.